Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome aboard the Audio Astra for our very first human organ tier list stream. So, hello everyone. Hello Rumi, Tommy, Alex, the other Alex, Hatanashi, Atroirus. I'm glad you all could make it. So, you broke your back? Good, we'll go over that today. So, without any further ado, let's get started. So, here we have our human body. Actually, wait. Should I get rid of the chat box? It's a little in the way. I guess this is the downside to not having an outline. Or not an outline. What do they call it? You know the thing that... the layout? I don't know. Where can I move it? Where it's not going to cover something. Yeah, the overlay. I don't have one of those. Okay, we'll just not have chat for this stream, I suppose. I can still read everything you say. You just won't be appearing on the stream. So anyways, reading human organs. For everyone, I think I will try to discuss at least 3 things. 1, what the organ does. 2, what can go wrong with the organ. And 3, what happens if you don't have the organ? Or you could also say, can you live without the organ? Anyways, those will be our 3 main categories. And we'll rate them probably 1 out of 10 and give everything a nice composite rating after that. And we'll see where everything ends up. Atrois, you just broke your back? You fall on your floor? Oh no. You need one of those life alerts. Help, you've fallen and you can't get up. Yes, this is a health education stream. Be very grateful that Dr. Astra is taking time from seeing her patients for this. Alright, so first we have here the heart. Now, this is your heart. It's not quite in the middle of your chest. It's slightly on the left side. Just so you know, if you want to know, the heart is slightly to the left of the middle of the chest. People always think it's in the middle of the chest, but it's not really there. Anyways, here's your heart. What does it do? It pumps blood. I think you all knew that. But yeah, your heart pumps blood. It doesn't really do anything else. That's pretty much it. I don't think I have anything more to add to that. Well, you could say it has 4 chambers. I don't know if I can actually show it. But, okay. So, gonna find because I can. Oh, George, does it feel like you're gonna die? Well, if you're gonna die, you should probably call an ambulance. Just my piece of advice. I don't think anyone here can help you. Yes, it pumps blood. The heart has 4 chambers. There are 2 circulation systems. One goes to the lungs and comes back with oxygen. The other goes out to the body and comes back. There are 4 chambers. There's a right and left. The upper ones are called the atrium, and the bottom ones are called the ventricles. And fun fact, you don't really need your upper 2 chambers, the atrium. Yeah, they don't really do too much. Pretty much all the work is done by the ventricles and mostly the left ventricle. Oh, hello, Maxim. Glad you make it. Atrium is part of the building. It is also that. The atrium of the heart are so called because atrium is the entrance of a building, and the atrium of the heart is where blood enters the heart. Hence the name. I have no idea why the ventricles are called that. Don't ask me. But anyway, so that's what the heart does. What can go wrong with the heart? Well, mostly heart disease, heart attacks, cholesterol. If you get a lot of fat, you have cholesterol buildup in your coronary arteries. Your heart pumps very hard, so it needs a lot of oxygen, and when it can't get enough oxygen, you have a heart attack, and then you die. Eventually. You can survive heart attacks. The results aren't good. So yeah, that's the main thing that goes wrong with the heart. There's other things, but the heart is relatively well behaved other than the whole heart attack things. You can have like conduction abnormalities because the heart is also very much like an electrical circuit. There's a circuit that starts around the top here and then moves downwards. Electrical charge comes down, then circles back up. And sometimes that can go awry, and then you get arrhythmias. And those are fun. Yes. I recommend everyone work out. It's good for you. But speaking of which... Oh wait, no, not speaking of which. Where was I? Oh yeah, so that's what can go wrong with the heart. But you worked at a major symphony orchestra and a patron had a heart attack while a Star Wars themed concert was in, and he crashed as the Death Star exploded? Wow. I mean, sorry for him, but he certainly had good timing. Wait a minute, Maxim. You work at an orchestra? Are you a musician? I was not under the impression that you were a musician. Or were you working another job at the orchestra? Oh. Oh, I see. He's an usher. Okay, not a musician. I see. Ushering is also an important job, though. Okay. So that's what can go wrong with the heart. Otherwise, the heart is relatively well behaved. There are some very rare cancers of the heart, but those are honestly so rare that they're not even worth thinking about. So those are the first. So the third criteria. What happens if you don't have a heart? Well, surprisingly, you can actually live without your heart because artificial hearts do exist. So, with human technology, it is possible to replace your heart. You'll live for like a few years on average. It's not a great life, but you can in fact live without your heart for a little bit. Battery life is a bit of a problem, but I'm to understand that's constantly improving. So yes, you do not need a heart to live. Fun fact of the day. Except there's going to be lots more fun facts today. So anyways, I feel like the heart should go in A tier. The only real reason not to make it S tier is because it's a little simple, it's replaceable, you know? And so it doesn't meet, it's not a 10 out of 10 in every category, so we'll put it in A tier here. There's your heart. You do not need a heart to live. That explains a lot of what goes on in the more elite sections of society. Oh, Tommy, I assure you, there's plenty of heartless, poor people out there too. Anyways, on to our next organ. We have the esophagus. Let's see if I can find the esophagus in here. No. Oh, I see it, but I can't click on it. Gosh darn it. If we go into the back. Okay, here it is. Here is your esophagus. It is located behind your windpipe, also known as your trachea, and it connects your mouth to your stomach. And that is pretty much all it does. It moves food from your mouth to your stomach. It's a big muscular tube. It's not very complicated. Doesn't do terribly much besides that. What can go wrong with it? Well, it's a muscle, so it can stop working for no good reason. You can get like strictures. Obviously, the big thing to worry about is esophageal cancers. The most common ones are down here, where it meets the stomach. We'll get to the stomach, but have you heard of heartburn, acid reflux? And so actually, let me back up a little. So most tubes in your body have these things called sphincters, which are like valves, which open and close and keep stuff from moving backwards. But the esophagus here, it doesn't have a true sphincter. It's wrapped up in your diaphragm, which is a muscle that separates your lungs, your chest cavity from your abdomen cavity. And that little hole it makes through the diaphragm closes in on it, on the esophagus, and keeps it closed. But because it's not a true sphincter, it doesn't work great all the time. And that's why people get heartburn, because biology got lazy and decided to reuse the diaphragm and just give it, instead of just putting a sphincter here. But yes, all that acid comes up through into the esophagus and damages it, and eventually it becomes cancer. So, yeah, it can kill you. So let's see, can you live without the esophagus? Yes. You won't be able to eat food, because food won't be able to get mouth from your stomach, but you can live without it. People don't need to eat. So I think we should put esophagus in C tier. It's not the worst organ, but it doesn't really do too much other than move food around. Reused assets. Yes, it's true. There's a lot of reuse going on in the human body. Hello, Jaylee. Well, glad you could make it. You don't think you enjoyed biology this? Aw, thank you, Hatanashi. I'm glad I can make education fun. Okay, let's see. What do we have next? The rectum. Fun fact. Some people are entirely made of rectums. Let's see if we can find it here. Yep, here we are. The rectum. It stores poop. And it also helps you poop. That's pretty much it. It doesn't do too much else. Besides, I think you guys know what the rectum does. Let's see. What can go wrong with it? It can also get cancer. So, this part of the digestive tract contains all the, junk from the food you eat. And, it's storing that. It's in close proximity with it a lot, so it can get cancer. Well, yes, Maxim. Well, almost everything can have cancer, but some things have more cancer than others. But yes. So rectal cancers are pretty dangerous. Other things that can go wrong, well, if we include the anus, you have all sorts of lovely things like anal fissures, fistulas, other things. Oh, another big thing with the rectum is ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, which are autoimmune disease of the bowel. And both of them tend to start around here. Yes, so, Alex, nope, you're right on time. We've just been through a few organs is all. Hello, everyone. Yes, so your rectum. Where should we put that? It's not great. I think... you know what? I changed my mind. I want to put the rectum in C tier. But that means I feel like the esophagus has to be better than the rectum, so we'll move it up to B tier. Unless... we could move the rectum down to D tier. We'll see. Well, we might have to rearrange some of this stuff. I'll have to put this down. I just don't feel like the esophagus deserves B tier. You're having just had sushi? Yeah, I suppose it is just past dinner time for some people, isn't it? Let's see. What's next? Oh, lungs. Lungs are nice. These are your lungs. They're in your chest. The lungs are, well, they're big airbags. Not too well, they exchange oxygen, get carbon dioxide. Everyone knows that. But did you also know the lungs are very important in maintaining your acid-base status, or that is, controlling the acidity of your blood? Because one of the most... So there are a lot of things that are acids or bases in your blood. And one of those is carbon dioxide / carbonic acid when it's in the blood. But yes, so when people's blood is more acidic than usual, which can happen for lots of reasons, they will tend to breathe very quickly. And in order to breathe off some of the extra carbon dioxide and lower the acidity of the blood. Conversely, when you breathe too much, you can lower the acidity of the blood too much, and that's why hyperventilating is bad. So one of the things they used to recommend for hyperventilating is to breathe into a paper bag, and the reason to do that was so you breathe in some of the carbon dioxide you were losing and avoid having your blood's acidity go down too much. So yes, lungs are pretty great. Let's see, what can go wrong with lungs? Main thing is, so lungs don't generally do much bad on their own. It's usually because of bad things people put in their lungs, smoking being the most common example. And of course, smoking can lead to cancer, and lung cancer is very bad, very deadly, very hard to treat, very hard to catch. Yes, so now you all learned about breathing into paper bags. By the way, it is no longer recommended that you breathe into a brown paper bag when you are hyperventilating, because that can be a little dangerous, because you can breathe too much carbon. You can like overcompensate and end up asphyxiating. It's not great. So these days, if you hyperventilate, just try to calm down and breathe less. Yes. Okay. And so, of course, lung cancer, very bad. So, last part, can you live without your lungs? No. Currently, humans have not yet developed the technology to replace lungs at all. So, a lot of the reason why people die is lung related, especially when, like, fluid. Okay, so, Maxim, you raise a good point with iron lungs. Iron lungs do not perform the function of lungs. They do not breathe for you. What iron lungs do is force air into your chest. That's all. They're pretty much like a respirator. And so, iron lungs cannot actually do the job of exchanging oxygen for you. So the reason why iron lungs are old technology. They're what we call negative pressure. So the way iron lungs actually work is that you put your entire body in it, and inside is like a giant vacuum, and it has lower pressure, and so your chest expands and air is forced into your chest, your lungs. We don't use those anymore because they're big and bulky. These days we have respirators that just force air, just a tube of a fan that blows air down your lungs. But yes, since we have nothing that can actually do the actual job of oxygen exchange, so if your lungs, say, filled with fluid, which is what happens in, say, COVID, there's not really anything we can do except try to get more oxygen down to you. But that's why a lot of people with respiratory illnesses end up dying. And there's not too much we can do for them. Alright, so I'd say lungs are a solid A tier because of that. Polio victims that are still in iron lungs to this day? I haven't heard of that. I'm not aware of anywhere that it still actually has iron lungs because they're just not very practical. Alright, next up, the stomach. That's around here. Your stomach, it stores food. There's actually one person, well, I wouldn't be entirely surprised. Anyways, the stomach, people tend to think that the stomach does a lot of digestion, right? But it's not actually very important for digestion. The stomach stores food, so you can digest it more slowly, and that's pretty much all it does. Very little digestion actually happens in the stomach. And so, what can go wrong with the stomach? A few things. So the stomach has acid. It makes a lot of acid. And it has defense mechanisms against that acid, but sometimes they don't work too well. And that's when you get gastric ulcers, when the stomach basically starts eating itself. There's a few cancers and tumors you can get of your stomach. Those are usually pretty rare, but there is one dude named Paul is still in an iron lung from when he had polio. Oh, very interesting. I'll have to look at that after stream and figure out why they're still using an iron lung on him. Yeah, so there is one bacteria called H. pylori, which tends to infect the stomach. It's very common in third world countries. It's a little less common in first world countries, but still relatively common. But H. pylori tends to cause a lot of ulcers. And generally speaking, if someone has multiple ulcers in the United States, it's almost always they have H. pylori. Organs, you remember having those. Oh, hello, Vincent. Thank you for tuning in. Glad you can make it. So most of the problems in the stomach come from the acid in it. Other than that, it's a fairly well-behaved organ, relatively well-behaved, but it doesn't really do too much. Can you live without it? Yes. You won't be able to eat a lot at once. You'll have to, snack constantly throughout the day instead of eating big meals because, you don't have a stomach to store food anymore. But other than that, you can do fine without your stomach. So I think the stomach should be, I'd say, B tier. We'll put it up there. You just came to the stream after getting food poisoning? Oh dear. What'd you eat, Alex? Alright. What do we have next? Oh. These are your adrenal glands. Oh, any kind of acid reflux really hurts? Yes. But technically, acid reflux, although the acid comes from the stomach, acid reflux is actually caused by a problem with the esophagus. So that one will be blamed on the esophagus and not the stomach. Oh, goodbye, Maxim. Good luck with your stream. Chicken? Oof. Alright. Next up are the adrenal glands. So the adrenal glands, let's see. Stomach, a C, you don't need it to live? Well, we might move things. Nothing here is permanent. Okay, so your adrenal glands, they sit on top of your kidneys. They are very important. So these secrete adrenaline, hence the name adrenal glands, but they also secrete cortisol, which is stress hormone. They also secrete dihydrotestosterone or something like that. It's a sex-related hormone, and they also secrete a few other things that I'm forgetting at the moment. Hang on, let me look this up. Oh, cortisol, aldosterone, DHEA, epinephrine/adrenaline. Okay, those are the four things. So aldosterone is also very important. It helps regulate your blood pressure. DHEA and androgenic steroids, the hormones, yes, these are quite important. But despite their importance, you can live without them, but you'll have to take all those hormones. You have to get them out from pills or injections for the rest of your life because, you can't actually live without them. Oh, hello, Jason. Welcome aboard. Okay. Yes. What can go wrong? So, mainly, they're relatively well-behaved. Cancers of the adrenal glands are too common. There is a kind of tumor that's not cancer called a pheochromocytoma, which is basically a very hyperactive, part of the adrenal gland that pumps way too much adrenaline, and sometimes this will cause in people that they will just, it kind of like feels like a panic attack. They'll just suddenly start heart racing, feel like fight or flight out of nowhere for no good reason, and it'll happen all the time. Other than that, they're fairly well behaved. So I think we will put these in B tier because they're important and they're okay, they're well behaved. But the downside, so with all the glandular organs, is they're kind of very floppy and, everything's kind of floppy here other than bones, but glands in particular are kind of just like, they fall apart. They're not great. So I guess that's one of the things, like the tactile quality of the glands is not great. Too much stress, cortisol can definitely mess up your overall. Yes, but too little cortisol will kill you. So stress hormone / cortisol is important for your cells to take in sugar, which they need to do their fuel. And if you don't have that, you just outright die. Too much stress is not good for you, but it's a very important hormone. Anyways, next is the gallbladder. Your gallbladder sits right under your liver here. It stores bile. That's all it does. What grade did I get in biology in school? I don't remember, but probably an A. Yes, so the gallbladder, it stores bile. Bile is a substance that is secreted by the liver, and it helps break down fat it helps break down fat so you can digest it. The gallbladder is mainly known for causing problems because it doesn't do terribly much. So what happens with the gallbladder is, because it stores bile, the bile can eventually form stones. So kind of like kidney stones, if you've heard of those, but bile stones. And these are much more common in women, especially obese women. But begin to get gallstones. And then when the gallbladder contracts to squeeze out the bile into the digestive system, it starts squeezing these stones, and that hurts and causes a lot of pain. So surgeons go in and take the gallbladder out all the time. It's like almost as common as the appendix. But so yes, The gallbladder mainly just makes trouble. What happens if you don't have your gallbladder? You kind of have to lay off a little bit of the fatty foods. You can still eat fatty foods because your liver still makes gallbladder. You just don't want to eat too much of it at once. Yeah, so I think gallbladder can go in. It's definitely a D tier organ. Doesn't do too much. Is there going to be a test at the end? Maybe I should. I wasn't going to, but now that you gave me the idea. Alright, next up, your salivary glands. So these make saliva. They're in your mouth. That's pretty much it. So they help if they're not working right, you get dry mouth. What can go wrong? Well, you can also get salivary stones. Fun fact. So they can form stones, and then you can also get infected because, your mouth is kind of a icky place with a lot of bacteria in it. And you can also get cancers. Not too often, though. Yeah, you can blame J-Wing. So, and also they're glands, so they're kind of icky, so I think we should put them D tier. So bad. Oh, the brain. So your brain's in here. It does your thinking for you. One might say, it actually is you. After all, sometimes we have this thing called brain death, where someone's heart is still working, but their brain is gone. So medically speaking, we tend to define death as the moment when the heart stops beating. But one, I think, would make it the argument that the brain is the true seat of the consciousness and the mind. Fun fact, can you live without your brain? Despite all evidence, apparently not. I am kind of suspicious, though. I'm not really convinced about that. I have met a great deal many people who I am quite convinced are living without a brain. We'll see. I need to cut up a few more people before we decide on that. So yes. Fun fact about the brain. It's probably the softest organ in your entire body. Like, everything in here is pretty floppy. But the brain is like jello. Like, if you put it in a bowl, it will conform to the shape of the bowl. It is very delicate. And it's very soft. And honestly, it's not a lot of fun to, like, try and take out or hold or move around. And, I mean, that's why you have all this skull and stuff. How do I know that? Well, fun fact, I just took out a brain today. Yeah, I'm not allowed to tell you about that. Sorry. Yeah, the chicken that lived for half a year with no head, it had a small part of the brain stem. The brain, so fun fact about the kind of like the evolution and the anatomy of the brain. Oh, hello, Pokey. Welcome aboard. Glad you can make it. So the brains, the higher up the outer you were going with the brain is the more evolved portions. So the brainstem, for instance, is where the brain connects to the spinal cord. You can't really see it here. Isn't the brain made like 60% fat? No. There is no fat in the brain at all. If there is fat in the brain, something is very, very wrong. Okay, so the brain stem, which is in the center, is the oldest part of the brain, evolutionary speaking, and it handles your most basic functions that you need to live, like breathing and making your heart beat. But as you go further out, we have like the reptile parts of the brain and then the mammal parts of the brain. And each of these have a higher function or more complex functions and do more and more thinking for you. So yeah, that's a fun fact. Yeah, so brains don't have it. The brain is a very special organ in a lot of ways. So you can see this in this one, it's wrapped by, oh, here we are, the dura. Oh, yes, Alex, well, you see, evolution goes, first there was fish, then amphibians, then reptiles, then mammals, you know, evolutionary age, and we can trace back, you can see the evolution of the human brain by tracing back. You can see like parts of the brain that reptiles, or that we have that reptiles don't or fish don't, and just going back in time. It's a cool little lesson, but maybe that's for another stream. Yeah, what are all these spirally things? Yes, so the spirally things on the brain are called the gyri. Basically, your brain, so most of the thinking parts of your brain is on the outer surface. So the brain has all these folds, so it can have more surface area, and so you can have more thinking part of your brain called cortex, or gray matter. Alright, so a lot of people voted for a brain for S tier. Oh, yes. What can go wrong with the brain? You can be dumb. A lot of people are dumb. That's the most common part of the brain, for sure. Or most common problem of the brain. Other than that, you can have strokes, are fairly common, especially as you get older. You can have cancers. Cancers of the brain are relatively rare, not too common. Yeah, strokes are fairly common though. Although you can argue that the strokes aren't really the brain's problem. They're a problem with the arteries or the veins in the brain. But yes, the most common problem with the brain is just dumb. Every documented mental illness? Well, that's an interesting question, Ark, would you bring it up. You know, it's not clear that mental illnesses are necessarily problems with the brain. It's a very complex subject. We can go into it some other time. Yes, Jalen, you have contracted stage 4 dumb. Hatanachi's right. I'm sorry, that's terminal. There's no treatment. It's just something you were born with and you gotta live with, unfortunately. So yes, we'll put the brain in S tier, because after all, people's brains are the ones who make tier list. So without brains, we couldn't have this stream. Therefore, the brain is S tier. S tier. All right. Next up, your thyroid. Your thyroid is it's commonly referred to a butterfly-shaped organ sits right on your neck. Nathaniel Alvarez, welcome aboard. I'm glad you can make it. We'll get to eyes soon. We'll discuss those. Your dying wish to be Arderia's next test volunteer? I can make that happen. But yes, anyways, the thyroid. What does the thyroid do? It secretes thyroid hormone. What does thyroid hormone do? It kind of controls your metabolic rate. So it controls, so if you have a lot of thyroid hormone, you'll have a high body temperature, you'll feel very energetic, you'll have a lot of energy. If you have too little higher thyroid hormone, you'll feel very lethargic, you'll gain weight, you'll be very cold all the time. Fun fact, some people try and take artificial thyroid hormone to lose weight. It's not recommended at all because you can very easily mess up your actual thyroid by doing that. So yeah, not a great strategy. Stick to diet and exercise. Those are safer. It's kind of like in the realm of eating tapeworms to lose weight. Not a great idea. Kind of risky. Not really worth it. Just stick to good old-fashioned hard work. Is the thyroid essential to have? No. Lots of people don't have thyroids because the thyroid gets cancer fairly often, unfortunately. So a lot of people are wandering around having their thyroids removed. And they just have to take thyroid hormone in a pill. It's common, it's generic, it's pretty easy to get a hold of, it's cheap. It's not really too big a deal. So for that reason, we're gonna put the thyroid in D tier. It causes trouble, you don't really need it. Alright, what do we have here next? Okay, your pituitary gland. I don't know if I can find it on this. So your pituitary gland is a tiny little gland kind of sitting on the bottom of your brain. And we call it the master gland because it controls most of the other glands in your body. It controls, we talked about the adrenal glands and the thyroid. But the pituitary controls them all. It controls, in males, your testicles. It also, in females, it also controls the ovaries. So we call it the master gland. It's very small, but very powerful and very important. What can go wrong with it? Mostly it can develop cancer, adenomas and such. If you lose your pituitary entirely, you'll die. You can't live without it. Not very well, I don't think. But people take actually, I might be wrong on that. I think because people get cancers of the pituitary, and I think they remove the whole thing sometimes, so maybe you can live without it. Let me look this up. Like Tommy? Wait, what? Did I miss something? Oh, okay. Okay, so, like that. So you can, actually, you can live without your pituitary. You just need a lot of hormones to be replaced. So, you can live without it. But I think I would put it in S tier just because, despite being so small, it is still a very powerful organ. Yes. You can't pass up the opportunity to call something the master gland. Wait, what is this? Oh wait, that's just another pituitary picture. Oh, I don't know why I have two of those. Oh, we'll just put that same right next to the other pituitary picture. Oh, next up, the eye. Eyes are the window to the soul, or so people say. We have your eye. The eye is a fascinating organ. Oh, small but master. Yes, so they're very pretty. Although slightly less pretty if you don't have the skin over them. Then they're a little creepy. But, so yes, the eye is a fascinating organ. It's evolved, capture light. You have the retina, which is like a layer in the back, kind of like the camera on a film. A film on a camera, it captures the light, and then the lens in the front here focuses light, so it lands onto the retina. Can confirm eyes work as windows into your soul. That's how you get in your vessels. Oh. Hafanashi dropping those lore facts today. But yes, eyes are pretty good. What can go wrong with eyes? Well, you have nearsightedness, farsightedness, cataracts. You can get all sorts of infections. They're delicate organs, lots can go wrong, and pretty much anything that goes wrong will interfere with your vision. But the most dangerous thing is the cancers of the retina, which, now that I think about it, the retina is pretty much the only part of the eye that really gets any cancers, which is interesting. So one other thing. So, it's a little known fact, but a lot of people have these things called floaters. Like in your vision, you might have them. There's things in your vision that kind of float around. You can, if you move your eyes, they kind of move with your eyes, but otherwise just kind of obscure your vision. And those are caused by very, very tiny, microscopic particles that are floating around inside your eye. Sometimes you're just born with them. Yeah, the little shadowy stuff. That might be it. Other times they're caused by breakdown of your retina. They're called floaters. They're perfectly harmless, although if you have a lot of them and they're you're getting more and more, that can be a sign that your retina is starting to break down, which can be a bad sign. Otherwise, they're perfectly harmless. If someone has a lot of them, there is a procedure that they can do where basically they stick a needle in your eye and they suck out all the stuff inside, including all the floaters, and then you just replace the fluid, and that can get rid of them. Otherwise, they're perfectly harmless. Yeah, a lot of people have them. They're very common. How about the tiny specks of light when you look at a clear sky? I don't know, Alex. That might just be you. Yes. So eyes, I think, solid A tier, or S tier. Good organs. Oh, next up, we have skin. Well, let's see. Skin, well, what does it do? It protects you. There are, not just one tiny, yet more when you're a tiny mortal, not just one tiny group in your red eye. Yeah, skin makes you look pretty. It protects you from the outside world. So the main purpose is, it's a barrier against infection. It also protects you from losing a lot of water. Can you live without skin? No, not really. I mean, theoretically, yes. You'd have to be put in a sterile chamber, be in a balloon, and you probably wouldn't live very long anyways. eyes glow, but very lightly? Not really, I don't think. I mean, technically speaking, humans do emit a tiny bit of radiation. Because, like, some of the things you eat, like potassium, are a tiny bit radioactive, but I don't think it's not visible light anyways. Oh yes, so fun fact, skin is actually translucent. So it's not entirely opaque. That's why if you, shine a flashlight through your hand or something, or your ear, you can see the light come through it. In 3D modeling, it's called subsurface scattering, and it's very important to get that like skin look. Otherwise, if without it, your skin just ends up looking kind of like plastic. Yes, nuclear bananas. Yes, potassium. Like everyone's very slightly radioactive. Everything emits light, but we can't see it. No, not everything emits light. But anyways, back to skin. Oh, yes, otherwise, so skin is very effective against bacteria. So there's lots of bacteria that can survive for survive for days on surfaces, but they can only survive for a few hours on skin, because skin has like natural, like kind of disinfectant properties or antibacterial properties that aren't really well understood. On the other hand, that's not to say your skin is free of bacteria. There are lots of bacteria that can survive on your skin. Most notable being Staph aureus. So what can go wrong with skin? Mostly skin cancer, but other things like, cosmetic things like wrinkles and like all sorts of various little pimples. You can go bald. Lots of things. But the of clinical medical significance is mainly just skin cancer. But the good news is most skin cancers are fairly harmless. So your most common types are squamous and basal, and both you need to let them grow a lot in order for them to actually become, life-threatening, which doesn't tend to happen because being on your skin, they're pretty easy to spot. And both are mainly caused by UV light or sun exposure, so put on that sunscreen when you go outside, boys. Otherwise, the danger with the skin is melanoma, which is a cancer of the melanocytes, or the cells in your skin that are responsible for their skin color, because these secrete melanin, which is the pigment that makes your skin dark or light. Yes. So, melanoma is very dangerous. It's bad news. But other than that, skin is relatively well behaved. So we will put skin, I think, it can go in S tier. I think it's a good organ. Oh, fun fact, sun exposure also causes wrinkles later in life. If you look at old people sometime, you'll notice that they have tend to have a lot of wrinkles on their face and their hands and arms, but on the parts of their body that are typically covered, like their chest or back, they will have far fewer wrinkles. And that's because a lot of the wrinkles are caused by sun damage. And so if you want to look good in old age, avoid the sun. Very important. It's commonly said that dermatologists will just avoid the sun like a plague. What about the wrinkles you get when you've been in water for a while? So, that's a bit of a debate. So, fun fact, those wrinkles, well, first one thing, your skin tends to absorb a little bit of water, but those wrinkles are mainly on your fingertips. So it's thought that it's an autonomic response. Like there's tiny muscles in your skin that are contracting to make your fingers wrinkled. And the reason for that is, well, the wrinkles help you hold stuff when your hands are wet. They give you more traction. So that's the current line of thought on why you get wrinkles when you're in water, or why your fingertips get wrinkled when they're in water. Anyways, what's next? Oh wait, it's another thyroid. Why do I have two thyroids? Wait, no. Never mind, I see. The other one wasn't... Okay, we can discuss that now. The other one wasn't the thyroid. It was the parathyroid. So the parathyroid are... If we had it... There are 4 little glands that are attached to the back of your thyroid. And your parathyroid, it manages your calcium. So calcium? No, bad Tommy. So calcium is very important for your body. Number one, bones. Very important for them. But less well known is the fact that calcium is an electrolyte, and it is very important in managing the electrical status of your body. So, for example, keeping your heart beating. Oh, goodbye, Nathaniel. Have a good day. I hope you have a good weekend. Yes. So, if your calcium in your body is out of whack, you will die because your heart will stop beating. And so the bones, calcium not only helps build up strong bones, but your bones are where your body stores calcium. So parathyroids are important. Fortunately, because they only secrete the one hormone, it's the same as the thyroid. You can live without them. They don't really cause cancers as much. So I think I will put them C tier. They're better than the thyroid. Calcification is unrelated. They're still glands. They're small and they're annoying. But especially, they're really hard to find because they're like buried in the thyroid. So for response to Tommy's questions, calcification, there's like natural calcification and there's like bad calcification. It's like calcification of your bones. That's a good thing. That's good calcification. And it is related to your parathyroid hormone. Or your parathyroid hormones. There's technically 2. There's a parathyroid hormone and there's calcitonin. But you don't really need calcitonin as far as anyone can tell. There's also bad calcification with chronic inflammation. Whenever there's tissue injury and damage over a long period of time, you tend to get what we call dystrophic calcification. Which is basically it's not good calcification. But basically things that tend to be inflamed for a really long time, repeated injury will tend to become calcified. So for instance, we talked about the gallbladder earlier. That's one of those things. If you get a lot of inflammation of the gallbladder, you get a phenomenon, what we call porcelain gallbladder, where the entire gallbladder becomes calcified, and it becomes, well, like porcelain. It's very delicate, and it can't do its job at all. And whenever they see that, they take it out. So yeah, calcification can be good, it can also be bad. Next organ, spleen. As Tommy once put it, the meme organ. So the spleen, it sits on the left side of your body and right around your stomach. As Aldir, you're thinking whether Aldir is a biology teacher or a speech teacher. Wrong, Alex. I'm a doctor. Couldn't you tell by the outfit? Not mean organ, meme organ. Because apparently, in a lot of TV shows, people go, ow, my spleen. So the spleen, it is basically a big sack of blood. Its job is basically to filter your blood, sort of. Mostly, it helps clean your blood a bit. It has a lot of macrophages, which are a type of white blood cell that will like eat up old red blood cells. They'll also eat up some kinds of bacteria. But so the spleen kind of sucks because it's a big sack of blood and it's very fragile. So for example, with abdominal injuries, someone hits you in the gut or you get into a car crash, one of the number one problems is that the spleen will rupture. And because it's a giant sack of blood, you get a lot of bleeding, internal hemorrhaging, and it's very important for the surgeons to go in and take your spleen out as soon as possible. So, in the memes, when people go, ow, my spleen, just be aware, that's a very bad thing. If your spleen is injured, you need surgery ASAP, or you're going to die. Yes. What other things can go wrong with the spleen? So the spleen it's very rarely involved with cancer. Most of the time you see cancer in the spleen, it's because the cancer's from elsewhere. It can develop lymphomas, which are cancers of white blood cells. And other than that, the other thing that tends to cause problems with the spleen is actually not its fault, with like blood diseases like sickle cell disease. So sickle cells tends to be more common in black people, but because this red blood cells form sickles, they get stuck in capillaries and get stuck in the spleen, and they cut off the spleen's blood supply, and so the spleen infarcts and dies. So people with sickle cell disease all either have no spleens, but when they get to adulthood, they either have no spleens or they functionally have no spleen because their spleen is dead. Sis, so can you live without your spleen? Yes, you can live very well. There's basically no side effects. You become a little more vulnerable to certain bacterial infections, and so we just give you some vaccines for those, and then you're fine. You live a perfectly normal life without your spleen. And sometimes we can actually fix problems by removing your spleen, because there are certain problems with like your red blood cells, if you have like some abnormal red blood cells, the spleen will try to destroy them, which then causes anemia because you don't have enough red blood cells. And in those people, we'll just go and remove the spleen. And that basically, like, it doesn't fix their red blood cells, but it fixes these symptoms, and they can basically live normal lives. Would it be best to take out your spleen? No. It's not useless. You can do fine without it. Generally speaking, it doesn't cause too much problem. And unless you get injured, and then it causes a lot of problems. But we don't take out people's spleens just in case. We wait until it becomes a problem. So spleen, I think we'll put D tier. It's a kind of crappy organ. Let's see. What's next? Oh, kidneys. So your kidneys. Oh yeah, fun fact. Spleen. Oh, so your spleen. Some animals can store extra blood in their spleens, and they can squeeze them out when they really need the extra blood, like when they're like running, and they really need an extra burst of red blood cells, kind of like doping, in like Lance Armstrong. But humans can't do that because humans don't get fun things. Yes. Alright. Next one is kidneys. The other organ that filters your blood. Your kidneys, what do? They make pee. They filter your blood, filter out all the toxins, and all those go into your pee. Which is why you shouldn't drink pee, because pee is filled with everything that your body decided that it doesn't want. And so if you drink pee, you're just going back into it. Yeah, don't be Bear Grylls. Don't drink your pee. So yeah, they filter. What can go wrong with kidneys? Most commonly diabetes. That is by far the biggest problem with kidneys. Diabetes basically slowly kills your kidneys, and you get renal failure, and eventually you'll either go on dialysis or get a kidney transplant. The good news is, because most people have 2 kidneys, you can get a kidney from someone else. Kidney transplant. So, can you live without a kidney? Yes, people do it all the time. Even if you have both, if you don't have any kidneys, you just go on dialysis, which isn't pleasant, but you'll live. So kidneys, I think we'll put B tier. They work very hard. You can get kidney cancers. Oh, kidney stones. That's the other thing. It's a bit more common. So, because your kidneys filter out all this calcium or other minerals from your blood, and it can accumulate, precipitate out, and become stones. And those are always extremely painful. Yes. But generally speaking, harmless. Yes, so there's your kidneys. Those are going, I think, could be B tier, could be A tier. Next up, your colon. So in your kidneys, yes, because you have 2 kidneys, you can have a fairly normal life. You have to watch of what you eat a little. Like, if you have 1 kidney, you can't have too much sodium. You have to eat a low sodium diet, so stay away from hamburgers and french fries and things like that. So yes, you could theoretically sell your kidneys, but that's illegal in the United States, so you'd probably have to go to Mexico or something. Have fun with that. Or, well, I'm sure some of you might not live in the United States. Can't have too much soda. Oh yes, Tommy. It is very difficult to adhere to a low sodium diet in the United States. There is very little that you can actually eat, and you pretty much end up having to cook all your food yourself. Anyways, your colon, also known as your large intestine. What does it do? It makes poop. So your colon takes all of the leftover junk from the small intestine, that's the undigested food, and it sucks out all the water. And then it goes in, and where it stores in the rectum. The colon, yes, on the large intestine, they're the same thing, Tommy. That's pretty much it. It doesn't do too much else. What can go wrong with the colon? Mostly cancer. Again, the same thing with the rectum, because you have a lot of like toxic stuff that's sitting in your colon for long periods of times. So cancers are fairly common. You can also get like infections. Oh, something that happens a lot in older people is called diverticuli. Basically what happens is if you have a lot of constipation, like you get a lot of pressure in the colon, and so that causes these little outpouchings between the muscles of the colon, where basically just like these little outpouchings, and these outpouchings very often get infected, and that causes diverticulitis, and that can be a recurrent problem, especially in older people. So the solution to that is to eat a lot of fiber and don't be constipated. I think can you live without your colon? Yeah, it won't be pleasant because so for cancer, a lot of times they'll have to take out parts of your colon, and when that happens, they basically hook up the rest of your bowel to a hole in the wall of your abdomen, and they'll put a bag there. So you're basically just uncontrollably pooping into a bag non-stop, and you'll have to do that for the rest of your life. You'll live. It's not particularly pleasant, though. Yes, so I think the colon can be in C tier. It's a little better than the rectum. It does a little more. It works hard. It does its job. Next up, liver. The liver is a great organ. You get to use the big knives on these. So the liver, it does so much. One of the things that we discussed, it makes bile, helps you digest food. But the liver basically metabolizes everything in your body. So all the food that gets digested, all the nutrition that gets absorbed from the small intestine, it goes up through the portal veins and goes straight to the liver, where all that nutrition is processed so the rest of your body can use it. So basically everything you eat goes through the liver. Everything that you absorb from what you eat goes to the liver. And so the liver is very important. That it also, detoxifies all the dangerous toxins in your body, most famously alcohol. And that's also, so liver regulates most chemicals in your body, but people really put the liver through a lot when they drink alcohol. So when the liver is abused a lot, surprise your lover once in a while with water. Yeah. Yeah. That one letter changes a lot. Yeah. So, yes. So so you see this liver here is nice and brown and smooth, but when you drink a lot of alcohol, your liver it becomes cirrhotic, so it becomes very hard and like not like very bumpy, lots of small nodules, and it becomes white. It actually looks like coral, and it's very hard, and it's very sad when such a hard-working organ ends up like that. It's usually because of alcohol. The other thing that can cause it is hepatitis C, which is a virus. There's other stuff that can happen. What else can go wrong? Cancer. Liver cancers, they're fairly common. But the good news is, oh yes, I can't go without mentioning this, is the liver is the one organ in your body that can regenerate. Most organs, most of your human body, they don't regenerate. They don't heal. They just scar when you get damaged. But the liver genuinely regenerates. You can remove a lot of your liver and it will actually grow back. It's the only organ in the human body that can do that. So can you live up? So Alex, you get to the last one. So I forget the exact percentage. So yes, you can remove up to 75% of the liver and it will be able to regenerate from that. So nothing else in your body does that. And can you live without it? No, you cannot. This is one of the few organs in your body that you genuinely cannot survive without. The other ones I can think of was your brain, your lungs, your skin, and your liver. Those are the only 4 organs I can think of that you genuinely cannot live without. So, yeah, liver is definitely going in S tier. Honestly, it's so important that I feel like it's almost insulting to to put it in the same tier. There should be like an S+ tier where the liver goes. Oh, hello, Ida. Glad you can make it. I do hear you're battering the Gulf Coast pretty good right now. Yes. Yes, the liver, as I said, let me just summarize for Ida. The liver, it controls, so it processes all the nutrition you absorb from your gut. It detoxifies your blood. It breaks down all sorts of poisons, like alcohol, but pretty much everything else. It makes bile, which helps you digest food. It can regenerate. It's the only organ in the body that can, in the human body, that can regenerate. And you can't live without it. And it's one of the few organs in your body that humans genuinely can't live without. So it belongs solidly in the S tier. If any organ is an S tier organ, the liver is it. So, moving on to the next organ. Add a new tier and call it liver? Maybe I should. We'll put it at the beginning of S tier for now, and hope it's happy. Hope it'll be happy with that for now. But maybe later we'll add a new tier, just call it liver tier. Anyways, next up, your small intestine. What does it do? It digests food. So people think the stomach does most of the digestion, but nope, it's actually your small intestine. Well, it's kind of broken up into 3 parts. Yes, your liver's enzymes are vital for determining how your body metabolizes medications. Yes, any medication that you eat through your mouth, because that's getting absorbed through your gut, through your small intestine, which we're discussing right now. So like everything else you absorb, it goes into your liver, where it gets metabolized by your liver. So it's kind of something, there's something we call the first pass effect, which basically means when what the liver does to the drugs. Yes, I just got it. Yes, so it's what it does when they're ingested orally. And for some drugs, for most drugs, it makes it less effective. But there's some drugs that don't work until they're activated by the liver. So where we take advantage of that. Anyways, we already finished talking with liver. Right now we're on the small intestine. So your small intestine has three parts: the duodenum, the ileum, and the jejunum. But it's okay. We don't have to. There's not too much you need to know about that. So yes, the small intestine does most of the job of absorption. It is very long, despite being called the small intestine, because the diameter is shorter than the colon. But it's very long because you need all that surface area to help absorb food. It doesn't do too much besides absorb food. What can go wrong with the small intestine? Not too much. So the main thing, the most common thing, is that your small intestine, if you lack a certain enzyme, it causes what we call celiac disease. And that's when people can't eat anything with gluten. So, oh yes, if you don't have celiac disease, you don't need to eat gluten-free anything. Something being gluten-free has nothing to do with it being healthy. It just means that people with celiac disease can eat it. And every time I meet someone who thinks gluten-free means good for you, I hate them. Gluten is not bad for you. It's just bad for you if you have celiac disease. So, it's also a problem because, people make fun of people who eat gluten-free food. As, they're, health nuts or whatever. But there are people with celiac disease genuinely have trouble if they eat gluten. But if you don't have celiac disease, you don't need... Gluten does not do anything bad for you. If gluten-free is kind of a culture, yeah, that's the problem. It's stupid. It's really stupid. Those are people with the most common brain disease. Anyways, so yeah, the small bowel is actually kind of unique in that it's an organ that has basically no notable cancers primary cancers. You can get, if you do cancer in the small bowel, it's almost always it came from somewhere else. So it's a very well-behaved organ in that sense. So I think it belongs in A tier. So gluten-free isn't essential? No, Tommy, it's not essential at all. It is for gluten-free is for people with a very specific medical condition, and if you do not have that specific medical condition, you do not need gluten-free anything. Anyways, okay, next organ, the ovary. Ovaries suck. Just putting that out there. So yes, your ovaries. Oh, this is a male body, but yes, they just have a bad time. Most commonly, they get bloating and stuff. So yeah, ovaries. What do? They have the eggs that become babies. So women are born with all the eggs they will ever make, And once they reach puberty, once a month, one egg will be selected. It will grow, become a follicle. It will explode out from the surface of the ovary, where it will be captured by the the fallopian tube and enter the uterus, and that's the menstrual cycle. So yeah, the ovary is responsible for that. So because of this process, where once a month you're having the surface of the ovary is literally being torn apart by this egg that's emerging from it, there's a lot of trauma, and whenever you get repeated trauma, you get inflammation and cancer. So ovarian cancer and just ovarian cysts, because a lot of times the other things is ovarian cyst happens when basically the hole that's left behind the egg, it doesn't go away properly, and most human women, once they get a certain age, have ovarian cysts because they're just that common. And so that's important. So that's what the ovaries do. The other thing they do, they secrete estrogen. And estrogen, well, it makes women, but so it's kind of important in that. And so the main thing, besides like giving you your feminine features, estrogen is very important for women. It helps them build their bones. You need estrogen to calcify your bones, or rather, women need it. Men, not so much. But so that's why women tend to get osteoporosis. Oh yeah, because all right, I forgot. We're gonna talk about menopause. So because the ovary has all the eggs when you're born, or when a woman is born, it has all the eggs it will ever have. Eventually, it runs out of eggs. And when it runs out of eggs, you get menopause. And basically, you stop having eggs. And after that, you can't have babies. But more than that, the ovary starts shutting down. It doesn't secrete as much estrogen anymore. And that's when women get osteoporosis, because they don't have estrogen anymore. And so that's why older women need to eat their calcium and their vitamin D and build up strong bones. Yes, estrogen. Some older women can take estrogen supplements. That's not typical. Those are tend to be the more extreme cases. Normally, you can just go with medication that works exclusively on the bones, because estrogen has lots of side effects. Yes, around the age of 50 is when most women tend to get menopause. But yes, ovaries suck. Solid D tier. Miscarriages? Oh, so I think that's not really a organ thing. Miscarriages basically happen because something went wrong with the baby, and that's not really a problem with the ovary, or it's not necessarily a problem with anything in the female body. Sometimes the baby just doesn't work. F tier, yeah. So we decided we should make an extra tier and call it liver. We should also make an extra tier down here and call that ovary. Yes. Miscarriages basically happen because the process of making a baby is very complicated and a lot of stuff can go wrong. Yes, okay. Next up, the pancreas. So your pancreas, let's see if I can find the pancreas. So your pancreas sits behind your stomach. It is this like worm-shaped gland sits behind your stomach. We mentioned diabetes earlier. So your pancreas does two things. It secretes a bunch of digestive enzymes, and because of that, it is known as the tiger of the abdomen, because you don't want to mess with the pancreas. See, because the pancreas secretes so many digestive enzymes, and it's pretty fragile, when a surgeon is doing a surgery, they do not want to mess with the pancreas, because if they do, it will spill its digestive enzymes everywhere. And, that will cause a really bad time. So, the pancreas has the nickname of the tiger of the abdomen. It's not, that's not why it's essential, Alex. The more important thing that the pancreas does is it secretes insulin. So, insulin, you might have heard of, it is a very important hormone that it makes sugar go into your cells. And you might be thinking, but Adira, you said stress hormone does that earlier. Yes, it does. You need both. There's a lot of things in the body that do, that multiple things are required to do for, but yes, insulin. If you don't have insulin, type 1 diabetics, so there's two types of diabetes, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is caused when their pancreas doesn't work and it doesn't secrete insulin. So type 1 diabetics have to take insulin, and they just take it all. It's just that inject themselves with it all the time, and they need it to live. The other type is type 2, and generally speaking, type 2 is caused by being fat. The endocrine system is actually incredibly inefficient. It's a miracle that our bodies... Yes. It's a miracle that humans manage to stay alive as long as they do, given that how poorly everything works sometimes. Yes, 2022 announces diabetes 3. Oh, I hope not. Okay, anyways. Type 2 diabetes. Type 2 is mainly caused by being fat. So what happens is that fat, people think of fat as just being there to store calories, but actually fat is metabolically active, and fat actually secretes certain hormones, and one of those hormones causes insulin resistance. So your pancreas is making insulin, but the rest of your body isn't listening to it. And eventually, what happens is your pancreas works because your body isn't listening to it, so your pancreas tries to secrete more insulin and more, and eventually it tries so hard that it kills itself and it can't make insulin anymore. And so that's how some type 2 diabetics can also end up being having no insulin. People are mean to their pancreas. But yes. Let's see, other than that. Well, like most glands, physically speaking, the pancreas is kind of ugly looking. It kind of looks like a little, slightly more solid lump of fat. It's kind of an ugly organ, but it tries really hard, and it has some respect as being the tiger of the abdomen, so we'll put it in B tier. Alright, next we have the bladder. So, what does the bladder do? It stores pee. That's pretty much it. Oh yes, I forgot. What can go wrong with pancreas? The other thing, of course, pancreatic cancer. It's very deadly. It is very hard. So, the reason why pancreatic cancer is so deadly is it doesn't really cause symptoms until usually until it's late stage, which is also happens with lung cancer, and it's why they're both very deadly. Yes, Steve Jobs was slain by pancreatic cancer. Fun fact, that's partly because Steve Jobs was kind of a nut job, and pun intended, and he thought he could treat his cancer by eating lots of veggies and fruit. And basically, he didn't turn to modern medicine until it was way too late, and that's why he died. Yes, that's correct, Joey. Anyways, back to the bladder. So the bladder, it stores pee. What can go wrong with the bladder? Not too much. You can get cancer because, pee is kind of toxic. And again, like in the colon, you have a problem where you have an organ sitting in close proximity to toxic stuff all the time, so you can get cancer. So that's why, actually, bladder cancer is very common in smokers. Because the kidneys filter out some of the carcinogens from the tobacco, and that goes in the bladder, and it sits in the bladder until it causes cancer. It's very common. You can have a weak bladder in old age. Technically speaking, that's usually not a problem with the bladder. We'll actually talk about, that's actually our next organ. So anyways, can you live without your bladder? Yes. And lots of, like, when you get bladder cancer, they usually have to take it out. I mean, you become incontinent, you can't control when you pee, and you kind of like, you just live with a bag strapped to your leg where your pee goes. So we'll put our bladder, let's put C. I think B here. Bladder tries hard. It's respectable. Ah yes. Your next organ, the prostate. Yes, so the prostate is a little gland that sits, or actually an exercise you can do to strengthen said associated muscles of the bladder. Not quite true, Ida, if you're referring to what I think you are. We'll get there. The prostate. So this is what Alex was talking about earlier, with in old age, you get weak bladder, quote unquote. That is not actually a problem with the prostate, or that isn't a problem with the bladder. That is usually a problem with the prostate. So the prostate, do we have the prostate here? Hang on, should have it here. Oh, there we are. Prostate. It is a little organ. It's a gland that sits at the base of the bladder. And in men, only men have these. It actually forms part of the urethra. So it's not just like around your pee tube, not the way. So what causes quote unquote weak bladder in old age in men is actually called BPH, benign prostatic hypertrophy. So basically, the prostate gets too big, and because it starts squeezing down, so the tube, that where the pee comes out of the bladder, it gets narrow, and so in old age, you have a lot of trouble peeing. You have very weak streams, and people it can seem like a weak bladder, but it's actually because of the prostate. And so there's a few ways to deal with that. ideally, you can treat it with drugs and hope to shrink the prostate. But if that doesn't work, what they do is they take a tube with a little scoop at the end of it, and they shove it up the penis, and they scrape out parts of the prostate. Yes, that's what they do. Oh, yes. So what does the prostate actually do? I'm glad we have so many. I'm glad we have so many guys in chat, because this is really the reaction I was hoping for. Yes. So what does the prostate actually do? It makes most of the volume in your semen. Most of the fluid. Of course, the actual, sperm are made in the testicles, but most of the fluid comes from the prostate. But yes. So you don't really need it. Yes. So that's what it does. Oh, the other thing that can happen is prostate cancer, which, oh, thank you, Hatanashi. Thank you for the compliment. Yeah, it dilutes the acidity before the sperm is going to. Yeah, it also adds, sugars and stuff to the fluid, and that helps keep the sperm alive and give them energy to go. But yes. So, the other thing, prostate cancer. So prostate cancer is why men, when they're at a certain age, need to regularly have a doctor stick a finger up their butt. Because if you notice here, the prostate is sitting right on top of the rectum, or right next to the rectum, and you can feel the prostate with a finger up the butt. And that is the famous prostate exam. And you guys in chat, those men of you in chat, have that to look forward to. Yes. So, fun fact about prostate cancer is that most people with prostate cancer die with prostate cancer instead of from prostate cancer. So, prostate cancer is actually not that lethal, and these days, if they detect it, most of the time, they just leave it there and watch it. Most of the time, it doesn't cause any problems. When it does cause problems, when it metastasizes, prostate cancer is famous for going to the bone, and then that's where it causes problems. Famously, it goes to the spine and causes these holes in your spine. But fortunately, it's also relatively treatable, unless it's late stage. People do die from prostate cancer, but it's less common. Watch it, like with popcorn and stuff, yes. By watch it, mean like you just keep an eye on it, and like you don't do anything for it. So yes, I think we don't have an F-tier organ. We don't have an F-tier yet, but we will put the prostate D-tier. Okay, our last organ There were some I could have added, but I figured we probably had enough to fill up the time. Yes. Watching a movie, grab the popcorn. Well, I don't. The prostate itself might not be something worth whipping out the popcorn for, but prostate exams, that might be something you want to bring popcorn for. Just a thought. Anyways, next, our final organ, the uterus. So, also known as the womb, the uterus carries babies. It is also why girls have to bleed once a month. It's not. I mean, if you want babies, I guess it's a very important organ. But otherwise, you don't really need it. It doesn't really do anything. What can go wrong with the uterus? So something that very commonly goes wrong with the uterus. Oh, well, lots of things. But in younger people, it can cause a lot of pain. Your monthly menstrual cycle, a lot of people get a lot of pain with it. They get excessive bleeding, all sorts of fun things. And when you get older, what tends to happen with the uterus is it develops these like muscular tumors called leiomyomas. These are smooth muscle tumors. They're benign. They're not cancer, but they can grow really big and cause all sorts of like physical problems. This kind of discomfort be really annoying, and just because it's really big and ugly. Something else that can happen bad with the uterus is called endometriosis. To explain a bit, the monthly period is what happens when the inner lining of the uterus sloughs off, and happens once a month. It also has to grow back every month when it does that. So the endometrium is what we call it. It's a very active glandular structure, but sometimes when it sloughs off, it can end up in all sorts of fun places throughout the body. Most commonly, so that's called endometriosis. When you get these endometrial glands you can end up in the muscle of the uterus, and you can end up on the ovaries or anywhere. You can end up anywhere. They've been found in fun places like the brain and the lungs somehow. And what happens there, because they're still endometrium, they respond to the monthly hormonal cycle that's caused by the ovaries. So basically, they bleed once a month. And so you get these cysts that form because you have these glands implanted in all sorts of places that just bleed once a month. And that blood accumulates and grows and forms cysts. And yeah, they've been found in all sorts of Hatanashi. You asked, wait, how? I assume it's in response to your question of how they end up in the lungs and brain. So how endometriosis occurs is actually a subject of the debate. Most commonly ends up like in the pelvic cavity. And people think that's because the main cause is because the endometrial glands they like back up through the uterus into the fallopian tubes and spill out into the abdominal cavity. But sometimes people suspect that they also are like being carried through your lymph system. So that's something we haven't discussed, because if I were to give lymph nodes a tier, they would be in their own tier below ovaries, like below F tier, like maybe like E tier. I didn't include them because I don't want to talk about them. Yeah. And so, but the lymph system is so most people know about arteries and veins, but the lymph system is an additional system of vessels throughout your body that basically it's like a trash collection. It collects all the extra fluid from your body and carries it everywhere, and eventually it gets dumped back into the veins. But cancer tends to get carried along through the lymph nodes, and it can go anywhere through the lymph system. And people think that those rare cases where those endometrium ends up in the brain or the lungs is because it's getting carried through the lymph nodes or lymph systems. So yes. Think you learn you should respect women lots for what you have to put up with? Yes, you should. So yeah. Uterus sucks. You think that humans should evolve a new way of reproduction? That would be nice. It'd be nice when we can have iron wombs instead of just iron lungs. That would actually be a much more practical invention. But yes, there is a reason why gynecology or the study of female anatomy and physiology in medicine is its own specialty, whereas all the male organs just get lumped together with the genito-GU specialty. Yeah. So there's a reason why women have our own specialty. It's very complicated, and women have to put up with a lot. So yes, that is... He really made a science for female anatomy. Yes. Tommy, you are not the first person to make that observation. But yes. So that's our tier list today. But thank you for coming with that. Oh, hello, Depressed Bean. Glad you could make it. Yes, I am Dr. Astra today. So yes, adjustments to our tier list. We want an extra tier up here called liver, and we want an F tier down here for ovaries, prostate, uterus, and if we had lymph nodes, that would be in a tier below. It'd be an E tier. All right. I think that's it for today's stream. How much per tongue? Maybe next time. I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. Alright everyone, that is it for today's stream. I am surprised by how well that time ended up working out. We are right on 2 hours. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. I hope it was fun and educational for you as it was for me. And I hope you all will have a great weekend. I will be streaming more Mass Effect tomorrow. I don't be back to the usual streams, but thank you everyone. I'm really happy with how this stream turned out. And I definitely want to do more educational streams in the future. I don't know about a part 2. I'm not sure how many other organs are in the body that we could make another tier list for. But we can certainly do something else, biology or medical related. Yeah, if you have any ideas, feel free to message me on Twitter or leave a comment on the YouTube below. Yeah, if you have any more ideas, let me know. In the meantime, I'll slowly work on planning those out. I do want more excuses to use this alt model in the future. So more educational streams it is. But yeah, thank you all for showing up. You guys really made this stream fun, and I'm glad I did it. Thank you all. I hope you'll be able to tune in tomorrow at 8 p.m. EST for more Mass Effect. Good night, everyone, and I hope you all have a great weekend. Good night. Good night.